In this lesson, we are going to learn about general settings. General settings are usually completed when the LMS is brand new, and then would only change again when there's a policy change or a new feature from the LMS comes out, and we would go into general settings to enable the feature. There are tabs at the top of the General Settings window that gives us all the functions of General Settings, beginning with the Login tab. The Login tab allows us to create a custom message for your learners. We can see the message used by TraCorp University down here. This message is actually shown to the student as soon as they log in. Along with the login message, you can set other options on your login. In most cases, we will leave the Require Secure SSL connection on, and in most cases, unless you're running the LMS inside another website, you would not turn on the Hide Logout button for user students or administrators. In this LMS, we allow students to register themselves, but in many LMSs, students don't register themselves. Their information is sent over from an HR feed. On the next section down, we see Force Required User Fields. This setting is used when a registration field is added later and you wish that the student fills that registration field out. An example would be, let's say that you want to capture a student's cell phone number, but for the first year of using the LMS, you did not have those registration fields. Now when you add the cell phone number registration field, it will force the student to put in their cell phone number the next time they log in. Below this, we have track user logins for reports, and if enabled, it will show up on various reports, including the activity reports and user group reports. The TraCorp LMS allows us to create our own logon message along with the links for any help information that you might want for the learner. But you create all of that login information in the field that says Text for Login screen. Here we have the login box width and height settings. These are only used when we are using the older classic LMS style. Our new LMS style is mobile ready, so it resizes automatically to the correct size for the device that is accessing the LMS. Fields are also provided for a custom login URL for single sign-on and also a logout redirect. So if you don't want the student to go back to the login page, you can redirect the student to a different URL. The Passwords tab allows you to set a login policy that matches the login policy of your organization. In this case, we have a minimum password length of 8. We're saying that one uppercase letter is required, one lowercase letter is required, and one number is required in your password. Minimum number of symbols is set to 0. This tells the LMS that symbols are not required. We can also say how many days our password policy is in effect for, and in this case, we wanted to make it 90 days. We simply enter that in the field, and learners will have to change their password every 90 days. The checkboxes below allow you to set whether or not you're going to enforce password policies the same across all different user groups, including students. If you are doing a single sign-on system, many times the password will be set in Active Directory or by whatever controls your single sign-on. But in this case, we want to lock the password so that no one can reset the password because passwords will not be controlled by the LMS system. On our last option, we see sync passwords between an admin and their linked student account. We can select sync passwords, and then the same password will be used for both the student and the administrative account. The next tab determines how students are handled by the LMS. In this case, if the student's name and email are coming over from the HR system, then you want to lock the name so that they can't change the name field. Obviously, this won't work in a self-registration environment where we allow students to register and change their name if their name changes. The next setting allows students to assign their own content if available. This allows students to assign content if we make it available to them. Otherwise, if we leave this unchecked, students will not be able to assign content to themselves. It will have to be assigned by an LMS administrator. The next setting says users who can only self-assign content that is available for their groups. When this is checked on, this has the effect of allowing administrators to assign custom catalogs to individual user groups. So in this case, the finance department can have a completely different catalog of training than in the accounting department. The next option is to allow students to manually archive and unarchive their content. This allows students to clear their screen of completed courses. The next few settings allow students to print their own activity report, transcripts, certificates, class rosters, and class schedules. There's only some remote cases where you wouldn't want a student to print their class roster or schedule. If all of our students are in the same time zone, the LMS allows us to create a default time zone so that when you register students, they will automatically be put in the same time zone. If perhaps your students are not all in the same time zone, then leave the default time zone alone, and it will force students to enter in their time zone if it is not entered in by the administrator. The Student Interface tab is used to set how the LMS is presented to the student. In the very first option, we see Novus 2, Novus, and Classic. Novus 2 is the latest and greatest interface. It is the one recommended by TraCorp. On the next setting, content search options are shown or hidden. This allows you to show the student that search options are available to search for content. There is also a default view option, and it can be list view, expanded view, or icon view. During training, we encourage our customers to look at every view to see which one works best for their LMS. The next two down are Show Achievement Messages and Leaderboards. Achievement messages come up on the LMS, and they show the students the activity from other students inside the LMS. The point of this is to encourage them to complete their content as they see other people completing their content. The Show Leaderboard is used to foster competition amongst groups inside your LMS. If the leaderboard is turned on, you can then choose whether students compete on completions or compete on credits. If you have Leaderboard enabled, then the Leaderboard Options panel will be turned on, and you can determine how the leaderboards are going to be used. Under the Leaderboard, there's options for how different things on the LMS are displayed. The first one says hide classroom and webinar content if no sessions are available. If you have a classroom or webinar session entered in the LMS and no future sessions, then don't show this to the learners until there's more sessions available. The next option is resize grid to all classroom and webinar upcoming sessions. This allows us to show all upcoming classroom sessions through an expanded window rather than a scrolling list. Next, we have an option for hiding available learning tracks. Generally, this is not turned on. We generally want to show available learning tracks to learners and not hide them. The maximum number of content items per page is the number of courses that will be displayed on a single page. Next, we have My Schedule content items sorted by. Now we can choose whether we want to sort items by the content title or the start date of the classroom or webinar. Next, we have Show Category in Content Item. This shows the learner the name of the category where the item is stored inside the LMS. Next, we see Novus 2 Only. Default scope for content should be. Now, we can show to the student all content, assigned content, or the entire catalog. The next option down is Show Content Cost. Since not every course will have a cost, there is an option below to hide the cost if the value is 0. Here we see displayed classroom and webinar columns. In this section, we can change the order of how columns are shown in the classrooms and webinars to whatever order we want. For example, if you don't want the first column to be date, then you can change that by selecting another option from the pull-down menu. In this lesson, we are not going to show you the classic interface options. This option has not been used by any new customers in several years. Other interface options include, if there is no active news, remove the news/panel button. Now, on students' login page, the default is to bring them through their welcome page and show them their dashboard. Otherwise, if we don't want to bring the students through the welcome page, you can take them directly to the content page. The Show Welcome Screen option is only turned on if your LMS has a custom welcome screen. In that case, it will be turned on by TraCorp when the custom welcome screen is installed. Showing Continuing Education Units button is only turned on if your LMS is using continuing education units. Otherwise, it's turned off. The Show Verify Attendance button is used to place a button for the student so they can do their own attendance at live events. Show Webinar buttons will only be used if your LMS uses webinars, and the Show Webinars button allows another option to find webinars inside the LMS. Next, we have Show Content Code and Content List. Every piece of content in the LMS has a unique code. It's recommended that you show the content code in the list. So if two pieces of content have the same name, they will still have unique codes. Next, we have Show Date Added in Content List. If we include this date, it will show us when the content was added to the learner's profile. The View Content by Selection allows you to view the content by category or learning track. Typically, in the majority of LMSs, you always want to view the content by a learning track. A learning track is simply a collection of content. Now we have the Allow Students to Switch Views option. Typically, we have this option turned off because some LMSs are designed to deliver content only by learning track, so you don't want to allow the students to change the view to category since the LMS administrator did not design the content to be viewed by category. Next, we see the option Allow Students Options if not receiving emails. Typically, this is turned off because you want students to receive emails coming from the system. Now we have Show Date that content was first assigned to the user. This will show the learner when the content was first assigned to the user. Next, we have Show Due Dates to learners if date is assigned. This is usually checked on. That way, the learner knows when the due date is. Below this, we see Show the Profile and Preferences button. In addition to a link, this gives us another button that shows the preferences and profile. We also have a Favorites button, where students can click the button to show their favorites. And lastly, we have Show an Icon for completed content certificates. This is the conclusion of this part of General Settings. In Part 2 of General Settings, we will dive into the next tabs, including Title, Content, Language, and Search Email.